Sorry, that's my streaming buddy, McVenner, is a fish. He has a bowl right next to my computer, and, say hi. He doesn't say it, he's very quiet. He's a fish, you know. There's something to keep my blood, well, I don't like I have diabetes, you know, my blood sugar's pretty elevated, but I do like having these, because I found out I had them, so I want to take them. Okay, so, I have a pen. It's my most important world building tool. Hi, I should probably start with that. My name is Lee. He, him vibes today, but she or they is fine. Let's go on to here and pop this. Alright, we're going to do a thing. Those of you who watch my streams regularly will know that this is something I do at the beginning of a lot of my streams because I'm very disorganized. I'm trying to get better at that, and I had, like, my streaming setup open, and it still isn't quite 4 o'clock yet. I'm just going. Alright. I usually don't stream on Mondays, but I said I was going to stream yesterday. I said I was going to stream today because I misread my own schedule. And a bunch of the people who usually stream on Mondays are not streaming today. So, basically, I'm just kind of streaming because I can. You know, just a vibe. Yes. Okay. I'm gonna, hang on. That is an offer I cannot refuse. So I'm gonna have to do one thing. First, boom. Can I work on this? Yep, there's that, and this, boom. Okay, now, we got this going on, so that's a thing we did. Okay, now I just, am here, and, so yes, my name is still Lee. I do character creation, although, today we're gonna do world building. So Rochivere is a capital city of actually, now that I think about it, okay, I might have suggested that I was starting my stream later than I was when I did my stream yesterday because I misread it as the Tuesday night stream. So that's a thing, but I figure, Bop. Boom. You can just come to my stream. I'm driving. So the capital's name is Rochivere. We actually decided on the capital's name last stream, and it's in a country called Hyrith or Hydian, depending on which version of the name. Hyrith is if I remember correctly, is the name of it given. Let me just check my map. Yes. Yeah. Hydian is the name given by the Stone people. Hyrith is what it's called in Hitherland, just to the north. I need to figure out what the government is. I know it's a monarchy, because they definitely have at least one baron, but Um, So I'm gonna go to, what was I gonna do? Oh yes. Anyway, so I was thinking, there isn't a big magical academy, so a lot of wizards train in the capital. It's the same way in Hitherland, although there's a lot of Hyreth is secondary. There's a lot of, at least in Hitherland, magic components are highly regulated, and there's a lot of paperwork to be able to legally sell them. There's a huge market for underground stuff, which is more expensive, and what was I gonna say? Sorry, I'm trying to do 10 things at once, and I'm not very good at that. So that's in Hitherland. That's to the north. Now, they have very similar government systems, and they've been at war multiple times. I would think they'd have a similar system, but I feel like in Hyreth, things are more relaxed, if that makes sense. So first I need to figure out the Hyreth government. The most recent war actually left a lot of scars, so the northern part of the country is probably as worse scarred as the southern part of Hitherland, which had this entire road that people just stopped using. They'd have this weird circuitous route they'd go to avoid taking the road to Kristen, the one just from north. So, hang on, let me do one more thing. I haven't been watching my stream chat, so if you guys are saying hi in chat... Oh, hi! I have people here. Hi, welcome, welcome. My name is still Lee. I still am using she, her pronouns today, but they or he is fine. I have my really cool Demigirl pin. I don't know if you can see it. Here, let me check to see. Yeah, there we go. This one is Paws of a Demigirl by Paws of Pride, and I had the Demigirl Jackalope, but I can't find it, so I'm just wearing this one because I had to present it to them, because I had to present my ID, and it was a whole thing. But yeah, say hi in the chat, by the way. I also am sunburned from today because, ugh. So that's fun. And my makeup still looks pretty good, despite having put it on this morning and worn the mask all day. It's coming off a little bit. I don't, like, half the time I don't bother. Well, actually, when I'm presenting fam, I usually do makeup. Usually, not always. But today I felt kind of like the vibe, and I had a whole bunch of things, and I had to go all the way to Clifton, New Jersey, and that takes time, because public transportation. But, I'm here now. Hi! Yay! Cool. No, awesome sauce. You are always welcome to pop in or out as much as you see fit. And you know what? I'm glad you're here. Wow. Sound like you're crazy busy out in LA. Yeah, no worries. Just come and vibe, kind of hang out. You can hang and listen. No worries. I'm just trying to figure out the capital of Hyreth right now. We actually came up with a name for it yesterday on stream called Roshiveri. It's a pretty cool things town. So we got that going on. It's a magical academy. And the language is French. Well, okay, it's a thinly veiled version of French, which, to be fair, when I named the country and the people, I wasn't thinking of it like that, but when I started working with Hitherland, I kind of began to understand the politics of the continent a lot more, and it really gives me, like, French-Germany rivalry vibes. And then Nemenia is kind of like England, and so when I was naming people, I would use that as a guide to how to name people. So I'm trying to rework from something that I've put work into lore-wise. Already, well, I've already run a game there and didn't put a lot of work in lore-wise, and now I'm trying to put the lore together as I go. There are dragons in the country. I know that for a fact. I'm going to put this down. Dragons. More so than there are currently no dragons in Hitherland that anybody knows about. I mean, since dragons can shapeshift in humanoid form, presumably there might be some kind of secretly on the down low, but no. The only place Dragonborn live on the continent is Napolita, which is into the far south. So I know there are at least one dragon currently living in Hyreth. It is in a cave in a town outside of Arez, and hasn't attacked anybody yet. It's kind of plotting and scheming. Also, impregnated the local sorceress, who had ancestors who were dragons, so that's an interesting vibe all on its own. But, yeah, Annette, who is that other campaign I mentioned that took place in Hyreth was they had to go on a quest for this dragon because they accidentally killed the dragon's goblin army, and trying to find Annette, who'd run away from home, and basically her father put a large bounty for her reward because he thought she'd been kidnapped, and it turned out she voluntarily left home, and then it's like, well, what do you do? That was the start of the campaign, and we just kind of went from there, and they had to go on a quest for this dragon to go get a ring that this stole from him, and then it turned out there was a lot of other stuff going on, and they got mired in that, and eventually returned the wrong ring, but they don't know it's the wrong ring, and it's very exciting, because, yeah. But, so there is at least one dragon, possibly others. There's kobolds. I know there's kobolds because one of my players who's a kobold who's currently in a campaign in Hitherland, as you can see, a lot of my, world building, comes from players who say, hey, I want to do this. And I'm like, okay, well, now this has to exist. For example, Luxodon only exists in my world because I had a player want to play a Luxodon. I'm like, well, okay. So now there's Luxodon in Hitherland, which means there are Luxodons somewhere nearby in this world somewhere who would maybe make their way here. Now, how did how did that work? And how did they evolve? And how did they work? But yeah, today was supposed to be just a world building stream instead of a character creation stream. I know I'm getting very off topic. I tend to. I love this world a lot. If you have any questions, suggestions, anything like that, pop them in the chat. I love to hear from people. Or just say hi. Like, I like it when people say hi. If you can. If you're just lurking, it's fine. No worries. But I do love when people say hi in the chat. So we've got the city. It's on the... Oh, I should write down that it's on the river... which river? I have a map that I've been using. I don't know if you can see it. All my maps are in this sketch. I should try to transfer... Hi! Welcome! Hello. My name is Lee. She, her today, but here they is fine. We are vibing and doing world building, and I was just showing this map of... I don't know if you can see it. We're going to the very north, and then we got Hitherland here, and then Hyren or Hydian or Hyreth, depending on which language, right here. So, but because of that, which means that this is the map of Hitherland. I have it all mapped out because I run more campaigns in that setting. Yeah, but I only run the one. But it basically the way I set the rivers up. This middle river here flows down into Hyreth, and it kind of wiggles around, and the capital is set on that river, which is the River Bolton, which might have... and 5-day weeks. I forgot about that, but it's an important detail. I'll explain. Okay, it's on the River Bolton. I'm just kind of working as I go, and there's a lot of stuff I don't know about this, so if you guys want to, hear about it, if you're curious, if you're like, oh, what about this, and I'm like, ask away. I do like to have dialogue. I know sometimes it doesn't seem that way. I babble a lot, but, if you guys want to say anything, jump in. I encourage it. If not, I'm just going to keep going.
Okay.
So it's on the River Bolton, which is the river that runs through. And then to the, you got Nemenia to the east. Boom. So, yeah, it's to the west. I keep mixing west and east. Yeah, it's to the west, and then you got Gilnia to the east. But the river that goes through, there's one more river that goes through Hitherland, but it goes, it cuts off before and turns and heads, west before it reaches the border. Actually, that's a good point. The River Bolton, there is a border crossing, the two rivers are heavily guarded border, because they're the border between two countries that have been to war multiple times over the generations. The last time was about 30 years ago-ish, give or take, the last war ended, which was quickly followed by a war in Gilnia, and which is to the east, and that's been going on for 20 or 30 years, and it's a cold. So the way the war in Gilnia works is a bunch of people wanted to overthrow corrupt government, and Hiraeth took one side, Hitherland took the other, and they're fighting each other by providing troops and material support to opposite sides of the Gilnean civil war. And there's the Dwarven Kingdom that's caught up in this whole mess. They got annexed by Gilnia, but is trying to declare independence, but also the king is honorable and wants to properly declare independence, but you can't properly declare independence from a country when, with a good formal gesture, if the country in question doesn't have a leader who, is undisputedly the head of the whole country. So, there's that. There's a bunch of factions. It's quite a intensive civil war. The capital is quite far to... Oh, the capital also does contain a temple to Caidan Callion. I remember this because it was an important thing in the character's backstory, so... Which is how a lot of this world comes together, is... through various player backstories. So Roshiveri, we know. No, Roshiviel, sorry. I'm pronouncing it Roshiviel. It's the capital, Hiraeth. It has the main magical academy, or university. It's on the River Bolton. It has a temple to Caidan Callion. So, in, this world, it works this way in for a lot of, at least smaller towns. Bigger towns tend to occasionally have temples to individual gods or goddesses or deities, but, most of the smaller towns don't. What they have instead is these small multi-purpose temples that are kind of built to honor a bunch of different gods with statues and shrines, and then in the pantheon, and then a few servants of a few individual gods will all take up residence and work in a community effort to support the local healing, support worshippers, run services, stuff like that. And, if any particular young people in town show a proclivity toward a particular god or goddess or deity and are, given a vision or something, they're sent to a more centralized temple, which, the various deities do hold temples in, have individual temples in certain, in certain different cities. A city, no, sorry, my internet's being wonky and I really need it not to, oh no, that's just the screen, sorry, my screen does occasionally do that, where it will pretend to be wonky, and no, it's just the screen itself like doesn't always display correctly, and sometimes there's this weird thing where it starts jiggling, and I'm like, I don't know how to fix it, but this computer is, I can't really afford a new computer right now, but that'll change, actually. Oh, I have a job interview tomorrow, for those who don't know. So, well, actually, depends on how you define tomorrow, really. But given that, I should be able to possibly afford upgrades for the channel. I did buy my, back when I was working before things went wonky, I had, oh, sorry, I should probably adjust my dice cam. I have yet to roll, might not roll any dice on screen, but I'd like to have the dice cam here in case. I do want to figure out a way to show you my notes as I type. I don't know if you know the channel Nikki Nerds Out, but she had this super cool way of showing her notes on screen while she was on screen too, so that it, yeah, I have to figure out how to do. I'm learning slowly but surely. Oh, sorry. Yeah, no, dice. One thing about dice is you always store them with the highest number on top. Always have them highest face up. See, 12, 0, 8. And plus for the fudge die. You see all the 6s are d6. Yep, this is important. It gives the dice good mojo, and rolls you more natural 20s and stuff like that. It just gives, it's good mojo to store and photograph your dice like this. The only time you photograph your dice on any other position is if you're putting a specific number up to make a point, either for artistic purposes or, spell out a date, or to kind of tell, like what I've taken to doing recently, which is to tell a story using, like, a photograph die and a explanation of why that particular roll was good or bad. But, yeah, if you're just photographing dice to show off how pretty dice are, which, to be fair, is, a useful thing to do occasionally, always photograph highest side up. And you store them this way in the tray. If you have them in, out in a tray as opposed to, say, in a bag in like my kind of pile of dice that don't fit in my dice bags, or in a dice bag with other dice, or in a little pouch inside a dice bag with the, other way to store dice. But, yeah, if you're going to store them in a way where they go side up, you put the highest side up. It's very important. Actually, I felt very vindicated in that when Millie said so on stream. Evie, who is super cool, Evelyn, she is Blue Box RPGs, like the power behind the throne, basically, in running Blue Box RPG, and she also plays Millie, and yeah. Oh, but what I was explaining about, I got distracted by the dice cam, sorry. Oh, but my screen does sometimes go to bring unnest all of the points. Sometimes my screen does janky because my computer is, I'm hoping to look into that when I get some more cash, but also I want to get more, like a proper mic, because this computer has a terrible built-in mic, so I'm using, as a microphone, the mic on this camera, which works fairly well, but I'd like to have, like, an own designated mic. It probably would up the audio quality. I'd like to get a second and better camera. Maybe if I get another camera, I could have a fish cam, so you guys could see McVenner all the time, and not just have me, like, address him while I'm, like, yeah, those of you who watch me stream regularly know I do occasionally stop the stream to feed McVenner when he starts being all fidgety. He is a lovely fish, and I can't have anything with fur or feathers because, my roommate is highly allergic, but I can have a fish, and so I got McVenner, and he's an awfully nice fish. But I was also explaining, before the screen when Jake was explaining about temples. So, The Pantheon for this world is the same one for Golarion, I believe it is, Golarion, which is the setting world for Pathfinder RPG. The reason for this is when I first started the campaign, I was using 1st edition Pathfinder. Now, hello, welcome. I think I have new viewers. I have so few viewers that whenever the number goes up, I notice. My name is Lee. She here today, but he or they is fine. Welcome to our thing. We're doing world building, and I was explaining why I use the gods I do in this particular world. And why this temple Temple to Cayden Cailean. So, when I first started it, I was going through the Pathfinder Pantheon because I was using the 1st edition core rulebook, and they have a list of all the gods of Golarion. They have their Pathfinder is really pushing this one setting because it was created that way, and so they while they do work in different settings, generally your everything is. I'm gonna double check that that's how I'm saying it because I always. Golarion, I believe, yeah. And there's different aspects and stuff. And so I used the gods from Golarion because I was running the first campaign. I started using it, the lore, and a lot. Two of my players actually were a cleric and a paladin of Cayden Cailean. Cayden Cailean is the coolest god. He's, in my opinion. Anyway, he's just cool. He might not be the best god or the most interesting god, but he is the coolest god. He's the lucky drunk. There is, in Golarion lore, there is a test of the Starstone that you can pass to become a god. Certain deities were started out as human and then passed the test of the Starstone, Iomedae being one of them, who became integral to the plot of the story I was telling in various over the various iterations of the campaign, which is why I have the same, deities. But Cayden Cailean was a drunkard and a sellsword and was a good person and very skilled, but was not, interested in necessarily being god or having responsibilities. But he one day while drunk, he was challenged to complete the test of the Starstone, see if he could do it. And blackout drunk, he agreed, and he passed it. And he doesn't know how because he was blackout drunk. So he just kind of is a god now. And the first character I made in Pathfinder was Alara, a Dwarven rogue, whose grandfather had started worshipping Cayden Cailean because he was a bastard and wanted to build a name for himself, separate from his clan. So, anyway, he was big on Cayden Cailean, so he passed it down to his children and his children's children, and then Alara became a Dwarven worshipper of Cayden Cailean and rogue who went with a light hammer because finesse, and was a very fun character. And that game fell apart, but I still remember that. But as I started my own campaign, I was kind of world building, and I built this up, and now I'm trying to create, move the world back together. So, I'm sorry I went through all that. I know it's a lot of history, but a temple to Cayden Cailean, the reason the temple to Cayden Cailean is important is because that is one of the few things I know is in the city, is this University of Magic, this School of Magic, and Temple to Cayden Cailean. I don't know what else might be in the city. Presumably there, because I've never had a player actually go during the session, so I've had but I feel like it should be something that, is known. And I really wanted to dig into the capital and what it's like, so I thought today's a world building stream would be a good way to do today. Right, so we actually came up with the name yesterday because I had a lot of people on stream in the chat, and it was like a really good vibe, and I asked out, and because I had Andre, who is a bard in the city, and is pretty cool. Oh, yes, I should mention something else. So there's a temple to Caden Callion, which is also operates a brewery and a de facto orphanage for a lot of also brewery and yeah, a lot of Caden Callion's temples are also breweries. Basically, certain orders dedicated to him will start a brewery no matter where they go because, you know, that's a sensible thing to do. And the brewery, the Temple of Caden Callion in Hitherland actually has a teleportation circle that links back to a circle that's also in the... Oh, yes. And de facto orphanage. I forgot about that little fact. So, there is in Hermville, which is in the Hitherlands, there is a teleportation circle in the Temple of Caden Callion, which is also a brewery, and what's the technical term? The Lucky Drunk is what it's called, because that's one of Caden Callion's titles. So, it's that's in Hermville, but there is a teleportation circle there that was built to ship beer between the two temple breweries. Because the border closed down during the last war, the border shut down, and it was like, just because the two countries are at war does not mean we shouldn't be able to get beer, basically. So it became an important thing. And it's often used by smugglers, and there's a whole of who can use it and who can't, and you have to prove good intentions to the monk, I think, is what it is. Because Caden Callion is chaotic, not lawful, so if you want to get around the law, there's no problem with that in a religious sense, but if you want to harm people, there is. So it's a matter of proving your intentions are noble. Rather than... sorry. De facto orphanage. So, that is an important feature that I did not think through, was that where the other side of that teleportation circle is. Because it's all well and good to have a teleportation circle, but if you only have one, you can't go any, you know what I mean? Like, you can only go to a place, you can't, I mean, it's useful to return to that point, but, from anywhere, essentially. But if you want to have a trade relationship established, you really have to have two to make it go back and forth. So, and if there's two, then there has to be somewhere on the other side of the border or wherever that it links to. So that is the Temple of Caden Callion in Rocheveri. So it contains the teleportation circle. And the way teleportation circles work, of course, is that if you have one, you can access it from anywhere. You get access to there from anywhere. And you just have to cast a spell to go there. Or otherwise, if you're teleporting without a circle, you have to cast a higher level spell and such. I am using a lot of teleportation systems from 5th edition because a lot of my it's a technical term. My new campaign in this setting is also 5th edition, so we're mishmashing the lore a little bit to make it fit, but that's okay. Created as a sister circle, but yeah, a sister circle to the one, in Hermville. So that's fun. So it contains one de facto orphanage, and so we have a Temple to Caden Callion that has the circle, which makes and it has a brewery and a bar attached to it because of course it does. Also, in this because Way of the Drunken Master is a style, a subclass in 5th edition, not Pathfinder, when I had 5th edition player want to make Way of the Drunken Master monks, I insisted that Cayden Cailean was they belonged to a monastic order linked to Cayden Cailean. That is to say, certain faithful of Cayden Cailean train in monasteries in the Way of the Drunken Master monk, as defined as a 5th edition subclass. If it were a Pathfinder subclass, it would be different. I'd have to rework it with different rules about drunkenness, but you would have to, the rule set, having rule sets inform the lore kind of gets weird when you have 2 different lore sets, but we're managing. But yeah, I will say there's more monastic, although they belong to the same order of Cayden Cailean, a lot of these guys go with cleric training or fighter training. There are no paladins. There are like maybe a handful of paladins at Cayden Cailean, and most go with cleric and fighter. And there's a very good reason for that, linking back to the way paladins work in Pathfinder lore, and the one paladin I have who's a player character. But yeah, most yes. Okay, so we got the teleportation circle that's in the temple, that's also the brewery. We have that, and the very few trained monks. I'm noting this down. Mostly cleric fighters. Handful of paladins. Okay, so, and they do send, so they have Temple Cayden Cailean. There's probably other temples in the city. There's one main temple. Every town of city of any size has at least one main temple to the pantheon. Any god in the pantheon who doesn't have their own temple in that city, which is, in small towns, all of them. So, and then you'll see, for example, a monastery to Aurori in one town and a temple to Aomei in another, and if you want more specific training, you would go to that one, but most clerics are trained as apprentices to clerics of their who follow their own god, or even those who follow a different god because they're the same religion, kind of, if that makes sense. It's a pantheonic religion, so, anyone follows one particular god, anyone who has divine power, especially other forms of worship are still understood to have, they still acknowledge and even pray to occasionally the other gods. And most pray to, a variety of the gods. But, yes. And, met out healing and sell healing potions to fund the temples and take offerings and generally minister to the needs of the faithful in any given town. So that means that in the capital there is a temple in cleric fighters, handful of paladins, main temple, and then there might be a smaller one to a particular. I don't know if there are any in the capital here, Depends on the city, and this city I don't know yet. So we're working on that, essentially. Okay. Sorry. Let me check one thing. I know it's, if there was a, okay, I'm just checking, yeah, I'm just checking. I want to, if Phantom NJ at any point does come online, we're all going to go and raid his stream instead of my stream, because I want to support him in the channel, and also, I can only stream for so long. I do like having longer streams, but I tend to not be able to maintain, so I want to, I want to keep, it's hard to explain, but I do, want to make sure to raid into his stream if his stream comes up. So I'm keeping an eye on that. Or if, you know, NPC Voices wants to do a casual stream, you know. Josh, if you want to do a casual stream, go for it. I'll raid into you. We can totally, and bring all 4 other people who are in the stream along with me. Yeah, my streams tend to be kind of tiny, if you haven't noticed. But, you know, it's a small vibe. And sometimes you get a couple people going in the chat, and it's fun. If not, we just hang. Oh, this would be a good point to mention that I do have started putting up all my streams on YouTube. So, if you really miss me, you can watch me stream on YouTube. All from June 20th onward. Anything before that got deleted, and it's gone. I could probably drag up the video files, maybe, but yeah, no, because I usually don't record when I stream. So the records are lost. I mean, I probably could if I knew what I was doing, but nah. We start with June 20th, and all the records start there, and I'll make sure to put them onto Twitch as I go. Yeah. But I've been slowly but surely doing better. Yeah, before, like, that was before I got this camera or anything. Like, I didn't even know how to put, a lot of the really early streams are terrible anyway, so, or were. So the main temple, to the other gods, so, if, since, we have a king, I am going to say that sorry. There definitely is a palace. And I'm pretty sure that there is a balcony viewing. Also say hi in the chat. If I hadn't said that, I'm watching my viewer numbers flicker a little, and I don't know if that means new people are watching or not, but I'm Lee. She here today, but here they is fine. Say hi in the chat. I encourage it. I'm world building Rochivier. Rochivier. Yeah, Rochivier. It's the capital of Hyrith, and I'm working on it. World building. What's here? What's not? You know, if you have any questions or suggestions or anything, because I'm still working on this. There's definitely a palace. Yeah, definitely a palace. And then the main square of the city. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's built with a big square theory. So the question is it like Rome or Boston where there's multiple squares? Yes, I did just compare Rome and Boston. But when you hear about Rome, you hear about Piazza this and Piazza that. Like, there's multiple big ones. And, you know, in Boston, you also hear Copley Square, you know. Okay, to be fair, in Cambridge is a better example, though. which is adjacent to Boston and also gets confused with the town in England. Boston, England doesn't get confused with Boston, Massachusetts nearly as much as Cambridge gets confused with Cambridge, England. It's the town of Massachusetts that's just next to Boston. In fact, but they have Inman Square and Harvard Square and Inman Square and Harvard Square. No, Inman Square's in Somerville, which is also right near there. But my point is there are multiple, and David Square and there's a bunch of them, and I cannot think of all of them off the top of my head because there's David Square and Harvard Square and Copley Square's in Boston, and then basically so is it my point on all of this, getting complicated geography lessons, and then you have University Circle and a bunch of other ones as well, but is there just one big square in the middle of town, or is the city planning? Or a better comparison might be Boston or New York. Is it laid out on a grid? For the most part, like Manhattan is entirely grid, which is very helpful if you're trying to find your way around. Boston is laid out by cowpath. Yeah. Like, basically they just paved over cowpaths. So, that was the city planning. And, the way that the streets intersect at bizarre angles, it shows. And the question is, which way is this city laid out? Or is it like DC, where it was built, to be aesthetically pleasing, but it is, if you look at DC city planning, the entire way it's laid out is entirely because of defensible. That is to say, it is entirely where can you put soldiers if there's an invasion and siege. The way there's central positions, and they're gussied up to look nice, but if there's an invasion, and okay, granted this. Oh, okay, hang on. Sorry, I shouldn't be watching my viewers. It doesn't do me good for my mental health. Like, if you leave, that's fine. I respect that. My viewers dropped in. I was explaining about DC and our, but basically, it's gussied up, but if there is ever invasion, all of the roundabouts and ways are designed to be easily defensible in case of trouble. And, is that the way you design a city if, is that the way the city is designed? And I don't know. So, I'm sorry, I'll stop ranting about DC, I promise. I'm not going to do politics. I know it bugs people, and I really, frankly, not my, I want to share D&D. I want to talk about this city in a country that doesn't exist, and I want to try to figure out, I just use DC as an example because I need to figure out this city's layout, and I know there is definitely a balcony for addressing crowds, and I know the main temple is across. There is at least one big square in front of the palace is across. I don't know who they put a statue of in the center. That would be a very useful political thing to know. Who you put up statues of is a huge... there's a lot of history and complication that I'm not going to get into, but my point is, for example, in the U.S. we have people like Benjamin Franklin or George Washington or Thomas Jefferson. And while the moral character of those guys could be debated, they were instrumental in founding our country, so they get places of honor in our square. Generals and kings and people who defend them. And then if they turned out to be disliked by history, the statues get ripped down. That's all I'll say on that. But my point is, who do they have a statue of in the middle of the square is an important question that we need to answer about this city. And please do say hi in the chat. I like to interact with people. If you can, if you're in a place, you can lurk. You're obviously welcome no matter what you say, but I do really want people to say hi if you can. Temple is across from said palace. At least, so I'm going to say there's at least one main square. I gotta figure out how the districts and the thing is laid out. That would be how you world build a city, right? The Temple to Cayden Cailean is not. So, I'm losing a lot of viewers. It's okay. It doesn't, I don't do this stream necessarily to just attract viewers. It also helps me process and helps me create stuff. And you know what? It's okay if no one wants to watch. I'm at least one main square. Sorry, I'm getting off track. There's at least one main square and statue in the middle. Who that statue of is important. Sorry. Statue in the middle. The Temple to Cayden Cailean is not in the main square. So I'm going to put this up here as a note next to the Temple to Cayden Cailean. Not in the main square. Not in the main square. Tucked away a little bit. So we got the Temple to Cayden Cailean that's not in the main square. We got a main square. We got the palace. We should figure out who the king is. That would be a useful thing to know. And what the exact form of government is. Hitherland is very strictly divided into baronies. Given the... Actually, I've already been working on this. There's also a temple to Abadar. He's god of law and commerce. There's a point to that. Which is in the main square. I'm sorry, I know. Just checking something. Because given how I've described certain things, already for players, I think I know how this works. So, trains not only general, no, you know what, there are no, because that's in Hitherland, and that they work differently up there. The Magisteres. The Magisteres? I'm I'm gonna check a translation real quick. Magistrat. Magistrat. Okay. Magistraticium. Magistraticium. Which trains magistrates. An order of paladins. An order of paladins who serve the king. Yeah, and then if they'd be oath the crown if we use 5th edition rules, and they'd just be paladins of Abadar, but with also sworn loyalty to the king, and because Abadar is the god of law, of course they would be sworn to rule of law, but because they're also sworn to this is important, because they're also sworn to the god of law, if the king tries to, say, subvert the rule of law in any grossly affecting way, they act as kind of a balance. Now, given the system, that's not going to happen. They'll never counteract the king unless the king is really bad, and the king can pass all sorts of unjust laws, and they're not going to, as long as they're not going to, actually going to stop him, but it kind of is a nice way of hope. Like, there is a check against the king, hypothetically. Now, because the king controls it, anyway, they are a way of check against the king if he starts acting too unlawfully. If he starts being evil, basically. Because Abadar is lawful neutral, so he doesn't even have to be good, he just has to not be evil. Which, to be fair, is a good start for a king, Yeah. He just has to not be evil. Who serve the king. Yes, he has to follow the tenets of order and keeping order in society, which is, a useful thing. Okay, so, Board of Paladins who serve the king and Abadar. And are sent to... Okay, so that's how this works. Okay, so I had a Baron, and I wasn't sure. So in the Hitherland, yeah, this is good. This is good. I'm having lore about Hyreth versus Hitherland, which is a useful point of contrastion to I'm figuring out how the government works based on what I've already said of it and how I can make that work. Basically, oh, and that's this is good. Hundreds of years ago, the Empire, Shattered Ruins of the Empire, the Napolitan Empire had a civil war. Yes, this is it. Okay. No, this makes sense politically. The Napolitan Empire had a civil war. It once expanded a lot further, and the eastern part broke off. Yes, the eastern part, no, the northern part, sorry. Northern part of the Napolitan Empire broke off. But this was ages ago. So southern, and then the, and then the Empire, after the Civil War, that's when the king, apportioned the 3 lower kings, was after the Civil War. This is good. Okay, so, let me write this down, because this is excellent. Now I know how this works. Okay, so, Napolitan Empire, Civil War, king appointed. Northern half broke away. They were ethnically, they weren't ethnically Napolitan. The non-Napolitan part of the Napolitan Empire basically broke away. So there were people who were ethnically similar in Napolita, and then there were the other, people in the empire, and then those others in the empire who they'd conquered managed to break away, but fractured greatly. This was when the whole Underking thing happened, which is part of the Napolitan history. No. Or was it always like that? That is a... that is an interesting question. We have to figure out that. Or was it some other empire that... Okay, point being... okay, so... fractured greatly. Two distinct groups... so two distinct groups formed. Two distinct human groups formed. The United and Conquered. Oh, so in his in Hydian, the Hierarchy of Hydian, old barons were allowed to stay in power. That makes sense. Barons. The old barons were allowed to stay in power. In power, if they swore fealty. Were allowed to stay in power if they swore fealty, and the king. Actually, it's very close. It's a closer system of government to what Napolita has and those surrounding towns have, except that the city-states are run by barons as opposed to... That actually makes sense, because they're between the two. This is making sense. The geopolitics are making sense. I am making geopolitics make sense. This is good. And of course, this is just one continent. There are other continents and countries and but the geopolitics are making sense. Also, if you've come in later, because I'm seeing our viewer numbers fluctuate again, but I know mine aren't accurate, please say hi in the chat also. And my name is Lee, she, her today, but here they is also fine. Yeah, I'm world building right now. I am figuring out the capital of Hierarth, and I'm figuring out the capital. I started with the capital, and now I'm kind of going back a little bit to figure out the government system, because the king is there. He also has this order of paladins, Abadar. Oh, that's why this was so important, because I realized how the paladins work, and it links back to the whole governing system of the country, which I hadn't fleshed out fully, but I had a kind of idea of it. So and the king filled in towns and had no barons, or whose barons wouldn't swear fealty. With his own people, which led to the which led to the founding of the Magistratiam, Isma, Magistratiisma, which is for those a order of paladins of Abadar who also serve the king, but they fill in as magistrates in various towns. Yes, okay, so on people, yes, okay, so that happened. Then we got there, okay. And are sent to, oh yes, so while in Hitherland, which tended to have larger kingdoms, larger small kingdoms, as opposed to just individual barony with like a town, maybe more. All stripped down to the name, down to names, and new ones instated. Okay, but this is, yeah, to promote national unity, which actually kind of worked, because no one remembers what the names of the super baronies are anymore. At least not anyone who doesn't actively study history, you know. It's like, anyway. So, so, towns outside of baronies, of the occasional with established rulers, that bent the knee, to rule on the behalf of the king. So basically most towns would have either a baron who'd had the town, who'd been in town for generation after generation after generation, ever since the fall of the empire, or would have a magistrate. Basically, it's an either-or sitch, but and magistrates all train at this temple in the capital, which is on the square, and the courthouse. Yeah, okay, so there's 4 big civic buildings. Okay, so in the main, there's the main square, city planning. And then each, so it's laid out in a grid. Is it laid out in a grid? This is an important question. We are working on that. Okay. Okay, so the king. Right. So the main square in Rocheville is square has 4 big buildings. Has 4 big buildings. Palace, the main temple, the Magistratisme, / Temple to Abadar, and sorry. And the courthouse. So there's 4 big buildings. And then there's a a reflecting pool. You know what? We'll do this. It's a reflecting pool with ooh, yes. Center of the square is a reflecting pool. Alright. And also the civic local court. So, in the town, there are 2 courts in the capital. Who's the magistrate? Are there 2 courts? Yeah, no, the magistrate, yeah, okay. Yeah, oh no, usually the magistrate of the town, the head of the magistratisme, who is also the magistrate of the capital, and kind of handles civic affairs for the capital, holds court on the first day of the week and the last day of the week, and the 3 in the middle. No, on the first 2 days of the week and the last 2 days of the week. On the middle day of the week, because there's a 5-day week, right? It's 10 days in Hitherland, but there's 5 days, and we'll have to figure out what those 5 days are. But, so on the first 2 and the last 2, the civic duty is conducted. Well, no, on the first 2 days of the week, on the first 2 days of the week and the last 2 days of the week, there's civic local things, local arrests. The magistrate has a system in place where citizens of, it's not like the Baron system with the Watchmaster, there's a whole separate thing, but the citizens are brought in from this particular city, are brought in to hold courts, and there's, divorce courts, and there's, I don't know if they actually do divorce, but there'll be ceremonies and, licensing and anything you would have a court do, custody disputes and any, petty crimes and custody disputes and any, technicalities happen on the first 2 days of the week or the last 2 days of the week. And then the middle of the day of the week is the King's Court, which is the king holds court there specifically and sees people from all over the country who have to come to the capital on this 1 day per week and make their case in front of the king. Essentially, they have to make their case in front of the king. So, boom. That would then reflecting pool and And statue, oh yes, to Femme d'Etat, who is, there's a whole, what's that? No, no, hang on. Sorry, I'm trying to remember French grammar. Femme d'Etat, and she has a whole history of, she's not actually, she may or may, she's one of those, like, King Arthur or something, where it's like, this quasi-mythological, like, yeah, she was probably a real person, but it's mostly a lot of legends, because at this point, she existed so long ago that it's, she has this mythic quality about her that is just, goes beyond mere historical figure. Yes, so she, oh yes, so courthouse. Head of magistrarisme, holds court on the first and last 2 days of the week. And actually, a lot of things shut down. Yeah, this makes a lot of sense. Actually, a lot of sense. Cultural wise and stuff. So instead of having Sunday as the kind of de facto day when things are often shut down, and which then evolved into Saturday and Sunday in our modern 7-day week, in European based society where we went on the Christianity tradition of having 7 days because the Bible said so, and the 7th was rest. So one day out of the 7 was which one it depends on which branch of the Abrahamic religion, but not informed by the Abrahamic tradition of 7-day weeks. The traditions of Hitherland has Hitherland has 10-day weeks. Hiraeth has 5-day weeks, but they all neatly pack into the year because the way it happens to rotate and revolve in a really nice, regular, round way because I said so. So, but that's one of the main cultural differences between Hiraeth and Hitherland is which day, so there's a tradition in Hiraeth of having the middle day off. That is to say, the middle day of the week, which I have to name the days of the week, is reserved specifically for, people often don't do business on that kind of day, as it's often seen as a day set aside for civic duties rather than business. So civic duties and religious ceremonies are always on Wednesday, essentially what amounts to Wednesday, this, middle day. Although, technically, when you devolve the 5-day week from, technically Thursday, Friday, Thursday would be the middle point day, but it tend to be thought of as Wednesday because of the 5-day week and the 2-day weekend system that has been implemented based on UBS stuff. Also, hi, welcome. I think we have one more viewer, but I can't be sure because my viewer count is busted. But hello, welcome. My name is Lee. She, her today, but here they is fine because I switched up. And I am world building right now. I am explaining about a country called Hiraeth and the capital city, Rochevière, and a lot of things, and the courthouse. Oh yes, the courthouses. So that trickled down from the king's court being on this middle day which I should figure out days of the week. But first, so the first to the last 2 days of the week, the handling local affairs, and the king holds court. The king holds court on the one middle day, and tackles affairs from all over. Petitioners from all over across the country. Let me just block that off as and in other parts of the country. So in other parts of the country, the middle day is often not to shut down businesses and so rather than government offices and like the stock market all being open on the same days of the week and having the same days off, Saturday and Sunday, it's technically the opposite. That is to say, government, now it's slightly different, but it's just an interesting difference. You know what I mean? If that makes sense. On civil affairs. All trials held by local magistrates are held on this day. So, essentially, okay, so days of the week. Okay. Sorry. So there are 5 days per week. One full revolution takes 400 days, and they do have 24-hour days. I actually thought about this calendar a bunch. So there are, depending on the system, months, but usually yeah. There is a system of months and dates, but generally a common system is to measure by days. So and every day of the week falls on the same. Every date falls on the same day of the week every year, because the number goes evenly, which is always useful. All right. A week. Here we go. Rajor. Dvajor, Trejor, Oh. Crenjor. Crenjor? Crenjor, which is the... This is the one where, you know, civic affairs, that's the one the king holds court on, that's a whole... It's a thing. It's every 5 days. Okay, so... Shenjor? Sheljor? And, Pialjor. And bonus points if you can figure out the linguistic roots of the prefixes for the day. I did the same thing with, like, days of the week, the Hitherlandy days of the week, which there are 10 of them. But I ended up with Tag instead of Jor, because Germanic instead of French-inspired. Cool beans. So, bien jour. Okay, so there's that. Let me just check something. Nope, still not up. Boom. Okay, so I think he usually comes on it, if I remember correctly, 6 or 7. So we're probably not going to run into him in this case, but that's okay. So we have the days of the week set. So Tonjor is when well, that's interesting. So in French, days of the week are lundi, mardi, mercredi, jeudi, samedi, dimanche, which are, they end in D, but the French word for day is jour, which is an interesting linguistic tick. They're actually close to the Spanish dia, which means day. Lunes, martes, miércoles, which they all end in lunes, martes, miércoles, jueves, viernes, sábado, domingo. Yes, I know the days of the week. Okay, but no, that's just an interesting linguistic tick. Because dia is day, which is closer to the French words for days of the week, but the Spanish name for days of the week don't end in D. English is the only one. Okay, granted, I don't speak every single language, so I am probably, and I don't remember the days of the week in any other languages, so German possibly, although that might be a tick we picked up from German. Let me check something. This is the benefit, sorry, I studied linguistics, so okay, a lot of the ones, Mittwoch. Okay, Mittwoch means it's like midweek. I can hear the Germanic roots of our thing. But Dienstag, yeah. Donnerstag, Tag, Freitag, yeah. Yeah, Tag. Yeah, see? The German, in German, which English is technically a Germanic language, that had a love child with the Romance languages. It's complicated. English doesn't borrow from other languages so much as beats up other languages in back alleys and then goes to their pocket for spare vocabulary and loose grammar. So, honestly, it wouldn't be impossible to say. But the point of that is English and German is in common with the German in that the name of the most days of the week, all of them in English case, most of them in German, I didn't see all of them, but at least 4 of them in German, which is more than half, all end with the word Tag, which means, Tag in German means day. Day in English means day, but days of the week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, all end in day, whereas in Spanish and French, the days of the week have similar endings, but the endings is not the same for the word day. Okay, sorry, linguistics, interesting linguistic aside. That was my field of study back in so I kind of pick up on these things, and it's interesting to look at. But, Brajor, Dvajor, Trenjor, Sheljor, Biajor. And I did the same thing when I did, which is, Watag and Istag, Seltag, and I used the similar thing where I picked numbers from one linguistic tradition and then put them with the ending from linguistic tradition coming from that country. Because a lot of, well, anyway, point being, we got this, days of the week, which, is a thing. And then, so basically the way the calendar works is there's 400 days in a year, either divided into 5-day weeks or 10-day weeks, depending on, which country you're in. But each, so basically, and the moon cycle also fits in. Actually, there's one moon. It's a big one. So what happens, Glarion, I think, has 2. So does Exandria. I think Exandria has 2 because Glorion has 2, honestly. You can see the roots of Glorion in Exandria, including Sarenrae being Pike's goddess, but that's a whole separate, because it started out the campaign. He did the same thing I did, which is started out with a Pathfinder campaign and end up using the setting for a 5th edition campaign and putting bits of Pathfinder lore in to that Exandria. This world I don't have a name for specifically because, well, here's the thing. You don't come up with a name, like, there's a reason that Earth, or Terra, in almost any language, okay, not in almost any language, but in the ones, say Earth is the same one as, like, dirt. Earth is another word for dirt, right? Ground, earthbenders, use rocks. Geology, geo is Latin meaning earth, the study of rocks. There's a reason that is, and that's because when you have one planet, you don't need to name it because it's just the world. So, it just becomes the world, and it doesn't need another name because there's only one. Whereas once you realize that it's a planet hurtling on a ball of rock around with other planets near it, then it starts to get to the point where you need another name because there are other planets. Earth is only the name of the planet because there are other planets and not just this one. So when it said Earth, the linguistic roots of Earth come from the word for Earth, as in the element, as in dirt, soil, rocks, that kind of thing, because it was such a thing. Because there was only one, and that was everything there was. Which actually will be an interesting, like our geology, it comes from the Latin word for Earth, right? So if and geocentrism was the theory that Earth was the center of the universe. But here's the thing. If are geologists still geologists when they're on other planets? Is earthbending still earthbending? Like, if you say earth, fire, air, water, does that change if you're not on Earth anymore, if you move to Mars? That is a linguistic question for our time. But these guys, people of this planet, cannot travel to space yet. So, whatever knowledge of other planets they have, they are not united enough to need a name for their entire planet, and it would vary by language. There's probably a name in common, but my point is, I don't have a name for the planet because the planet doesn't really need a name, but I'm creating this world, distinctive from all the other worlds I've created, which I know is, I do a lot of world building. I have done in the past. I've done dozens. I could show you hundreds of pages, books, stories. I built an entire solar system just for to prove oh, that was a fun story. So I was at I was staying in a hospital for a while when I was younger, and one of the nurses there was like, he said, what did he say? He said, "Oh, it's really cool that you can create worlds. That's the hard part. Plot is easy. Building up a world." I'm like, that is absolutely not true. Plot is the hardest part of any writing utensil, because we're talking about writing, because I like to write. And he said, that's not true. If you just build up a real world, plot will follow easy. So I built up an entire world. I built up political things and everything. I built, a whole solar system with different ethnic groups and stuff, and I held it out to him, and I said, there's your world. Do something with it. And he said he couldn't, and I'm like, that proves my point. I basically I don't remember most of that world. I turned it over to him, and it's his to do what he was with. I said it was, and it was thing. And then another of the patients asked, "Hey, can you do one for me?" And I said, "You know what? Sure." Because I was stuck in the hospital with nothing better to do with my life. So yeah, that was years ago, and both worlds I forget about now. I didn't keep copies of the notes. So my point on this is I've done a lot of world building, and this world is distinct from any of the others, but doesn't have a name because of the linguistic unnecessity I just mentioned. But, sorry about the tangent. I was explaining about the days of the weeks and the moon of this world, which I started with this single city called Rochevière, and I was explaining that, and then when I had if there was a palace, I was like, well, okay, well, what else is there? And then it's the capital of this country, so it's capital of Hyrith. So I was like, well, how does the rule of Hyrith factor into what's in the capital? Any country's capital will have buildings that mark it as the capital that are governmental, such things. Governmental buildings, and that leads you to need to know what the form of government is, and then when you know the form of government, you can then figure out what buildings are in the capital. And so I did that, and then days of the week, which factor in because on Glenjor, which is the middle day of the week, the king holds court, and the head of the Magisterisma held court on the other 2 days of the week, the other 4 days of the week, two before and 2 after, because there's 5-day weeks. There's 400 days in a year. The moon cycle is 80 days, with the full moon on the 40th, and then it's 4 weeks of 10 days for Hitherland for month, but, so the moon cycle takes 2 months, but the months aren't really used all that much. Essentially, when you cite a date, what you usually do is cite by day of the year. So the summer solstice is on the 200th, and the winter solstice is on the 400th. The first is New Year, so New Year is the day after the winter solstice, and the so the 400th, so, and the days of the week fall the day of the year, this date, so you would say, oh, it's like the 205th. And that would tell anyone who understood the timekeeping system of the world, oh, it's just past summer solstice, long days, harvest season, like work in the field, not harvest season, but field work season, agricultural growing, probably a lot of fruit harvest, things like peaches and stuff would be harvested right around that time. This is where you get like fresh growing stuff, etc. So it's out of 400. Day of the year is kind of, there are month systems set up, but usually what the most common way to talk about the date is, it's the 380th, or it's the 123rd, for example. So I think that means that the full moon always falls on the same day of the week, which is kind of crazy to think about, but I'm fairly certain that, the full moon would always fall on the last day of the week. uh, because of the way the system is set. Dang. Yeah. The moon cycle's 80 days. 40 days in, there's a full moon. New moon 80 days in. And then the cycle begins again. Uh, so, yeah, that is an interesting thought. Full moons always fall on the same day of the week. So I should write that. Moon cycle is 80 days. So the full moons always fall on the same day of the week, which is a thing. And which in that's an interesting thought. In Hitherland is kind of a cause for celebration. There's usually a festival on that day of the week, not just on full moons, but especially on full moons. That's kind of like their one day of the week that's a day of rest. But okay, so this is longer than most streams. I'm not gonna lie, this is longer than most streams I do. Because sorry, I had to fix my computer. Okay. Yeah, this is longer than most streams I do because I usually do hour-long streams. Hour to 2 hours depending on the day, but I've been capping them an hour and a half. Oftentimes what I'll do is yeah. And I think Phantom usually streams around 6 or 7. Closer to 7 o'clock. So his stream wouldn't be starting for a little while. So I usually set up streams kind of, and then I'll kind of finish up with the character I'm working on, or depending on what I'm doing for the stream. Yeah. So I do appreciate you all coming to the stream. I really do. But I think what we're going to do, because I did actually do a lot of setup for the city. I haven't figured out what the rest of the thing, but that can wait for another, maybe, okay, so tomorrow is Tuesday. We'll see how the first thing I have to do is figure out the job interview tomorrow, which will set up days I'm working. Once I know what days I'm working, I can rework my entire stream schedule to fit that, because that's kind of what we're going to have to do, essentially. But I will do my usual Tuesday stream, which is, let's see, let me check my own schedule, because, channel, schedule, Tuesday, yeah, I do 9 p.m. streams on Tuesdays, generally. Yeah, Thursday, so on Thursdays, Wednesdays I usually don't, yeah. So, but of course, I always say it's subject to change. I was trying to get the streaming schedule worked out, and then now I actually have a job, so I'm going to have to rework it again. But the good thing about having a job is that I know when I'll be working, so I can rework the stream schedule around that. Assuming I work on the same days of the week every week. But we'll see. But tomorrow is Tuesday, and I usually do Warhammer 40k on Tuesdays and Thursdays. That's how I've been doing. So tomorrow at 9 p.m., I'm going to do, assuming nothing happens, which it might, I'm going to run a Warhammer 40k character creation, world building / character creation stream. Oh, we've been doing the crew of this ship. We don't have a name for the ship yet, but yeah. So yeah, Tuesday, 9 p.m. We usually go till 10, but we can go later if people. Yeah. If I have people in the chat, I generally will keep the streams later. But if no one, what was I gonna say? I had a point. Oh yes, so Tuesday we're gonna do 9 p.m. If you want to join me then, that's tomorrow. And I'm doing Warhammer 40k stream. We're gonna, do shipbuilding. We're gonna figure out a name for the ship. We're gonna maybe figure out the captain, go from there. Cool, epic, world stuff. Yeah, we'll start with that and see how we do. And I hope you all have a good night, and thank you so much for tuning in and watching with me. I always appreciate them, even if you didn't say anything in chat. I still appreciate you guys watching. And if but no pressure. If you want to come back for another stream, I would really appreciate it. Stay healthy, and I will see you soon. Let me just do the thing.